In just 19 seconds, what started as polite conversation between Tamron Hall and Meghan Markle exploded into a verbal warfare that left the studio audience gasping and producers scrambling to cut to commercial. What unfolded in those crucial moments was a complete breakdown of civility, with the Duchess of Sussex revealing a side of herself that left even seasoned television veteran Tamron Hall visibly shaken and ultimately forced to make a decision that would send shockwaves through daytime television. The tension was palpable from the moment Meghan stepped onto the pristine set of the Tamron Hall show. Her entrance, usually accompanied by warm applause, felt different this time. The audience's clapping seemed hesitant, almost obligatory, as whispers about her recent controversial statements had already begun circulating through social media hours before the taping. Tamron, known for her sharp interviewing skills and no-nonsense approach, welcomed Meghan with her signature smile. But those watching closely could detect something cooler in her demeanor. "Meghan, thank you for joining us today. I know you've been making headlines recently with some pretty strong statements about your experience in the royal family and your life in America now." Meghan's response came with an edge that immediately caught Tamron off guard. "Well, Tamron, I think the real question is why the media continues to twist my words and create narratives that simply aren't true. I'm here to set the record straight, not to be interrogated like I'm some kind of criminal." The studio fell silent. Tamron's eyebrows raised slightly, her professional composure intact but clearly noting the defensive tone. "I'm not here to interrogate anyone, Meghan, but when public figures make statements that generate significant discussion, it's reasonable to ask for clarification." Reasonable. Meghan's voice rose a notch, her carefully crafted media persona beginning to crack. What's reasonable is allowing someone to speak their truth without being constantly questioned and doubted. I've been doing that for years now, and frankly, I'm tired of it. Tamron leaned forward slightly, her journalist instincts kicking in as she sensed the brewing storm. "Your truth is important, absolutely. But when you make claims about racism within the royal family, or suggest that certain institutions deliberately tried to silence you, people want specifics. They want to understand what actually happened." The word "actually" seemed to trigger something in Meghan. Her posture stiffened, and for the first time since sitting down, she looked directly into Tamron's eyes with an intensity that made the veteran host pause. "Are you suggesting I'm lying about my experiences? Because that's exactly the kind of gaslighting I've been subjected to for years." "I'm not suggesting anything," Tamron replied firmly, her voice maintaining its professional tone despite the rising tension. "I'm asking questions that millions of viewers want answered. That's what journalists do." Meghan let out a bitter laugh that echoed through the studio. "Journalists? Is that what we're calling this? Because it feels more like an attack disguised as an interview. You know what, Tamron? I expected better from you. I thought you, of all people, would understand what it's like to be a woman of color in spaces where you're not fully accepted." The comment hit like a lightning bolt. Tamron's expression hardened visibly, her professional mask slipping for just a moment as she processed what felt like a manipulative attempt to weaponize their shared identity. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats, sensing they were witnessing something far beyond typical daytime television drama. "Don't you dare," Tamron said quietly, her voice carrying a warning that made even the cameraman take notice. "Don't you dare try to use our shared experiences to deflect from legitimate questions about your public statements. That's not only inappropriate, it's insulting to both of us and to every woman of color who has fought real battles without the platform and privilege you've been afforded." The words hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun, and everyone in the studio knew that whatever happened next would determine whether this interview could be salvaged or if they were about to witness television history in the making. Meghan's face flushed red, her carefully applied makeup unable to hide the raw anger that was now consuming her features. She leaned forward in her chair, pointing a manicured finger directly at Tamron. "How dare you lecture me about privilege? You have no idea what I've been through, what I've sacrificed, what I've endured. You sit there in your comfortable studio collecting your paycheck, and you think you can judge my experiences?" Tamron's jaw clenched, her hands gripping the arms of her chair as she fought to maintain control. "I'm not judging your experiences, Meghan. I'm questioning your consistency. Just last month you claimed you were stripped of your voice, yet here you are with book deals, Netflix contracts, and a global platform. Which version is the truth?" "The truth?" Meghan's voice cracked with fury. The truth is that people like you enable the very system that tried to destroy me. You're so desperate to be accepted by mainstream media that you'll throw other women under the bus to prove your credibility. The accusation hit Tamron like a physical blow. Her composure, built over decades of professional broadcasting, finally began to crumble. You need to stop right there. I've spent my entire career fighting for truth and giving voices to people who don't have platforms. I don't need to prove anything to anyone, least of all to someone who can't handle basic accountability. Accountability? Meghan stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor with a harsh sound that made the entire crew wince. Is that what you call this ambush? Because that's what this is, isn't it? You brought me here under false pretenses to tear me down for ratings. Tamron remained seated, her voice dropping to a dangerously low register. Sit down, Meghan. You're embarrassing yourself. No. Meghan's voice echoed through the studio, causing several audience members to actually flinch. I will not sit down and be disrespected by someone who clearly has her own agenda. This is exactly the kind of behavior I've been talking about. Women tearing down other women instead of supporting each other. Tamron slowly rose from her chair, her movements deliberate and controlled, like a predator preparing to strike. Support? You want to talk about support? Let me tell you something about support, Meghan. Support isn't agreeing with everything someone says just because they share your gender or your race. Support isn't giving someone a free pass to make inflammatory statements without backing them up with facts. The studio audience was completely silent now, some people covering their mouths in shock, others pulling out their phones despite the strict no-recording policy. The tension had become so thick it was almost suffocating, and even the seasoned production crew seemed frozen in place. Facts. Meghan laughed bitterly, throwing her hands up in exasperation. You want facts? Here's a fact. I came on your show in good faith, expecting a respectful conversation, and instead I'm getting attacked by someone who's clearly jealous of my success and my ability to speak truth to power. The jealousy accusation was the final straw. Tamron's eyes flashed with an anger that few had ever seen from the usually composed host. Jealous? Jealous of what exactly? Your ability to play victim while living in a multi-million-dollar mansion? Your talent for making every conversation about yourself while claiming to care about others? Please, enlighten me about what I should be jealous of. Meghan's mouth fell open, clearly not expecting such a direct and brutal response. For a moment, she seemed speechless, but then her expression hardened into something cold and calculating. You know what, Tamron? This conversation is over. I don't have to sit here and listen to this bullshit from someone who's obviously been compromised by the very establishment that I've been fighting against. But Tamron wasn't finished. She stepped closer to Meghan, her voice rising for the first time since the confrontation began. Oh no, you don't get to storm out and play victim again. You came on my show, made accusations, attacked my integrity, and questioned my journalism. You don't get to drop bombs and then run away when someone actually challenges you on your claims. Meghan whirled around, her eyes blazing with fury. Challenge me? This isn't journalism, Tamron. This is a hit job, and I won't stand for it another second. You're nothing but a puppet for the same media machine that tried to destroy me from day one. The insult sent shockwaves through the studio. Tamron's face went stone cold, her professional demeanor completely evaporating. A puppet? A puppet? I've been doing this job since before you knew what a camera was. I've interviewed presidents, covered breaking news, and built a career on integrity while you were still figuring out which prince to marry for maximum publicity. The audience gasped audibly at the brutal personal attack. Meghan's mouth dropped open in complete shock before her expression twisted into pure rage. How fucking dare you bring my marriage into this? You crossed a line that you can never uncross, and I hope you're proud of yourself. Proud? You want to know what I'm proud of? Tamron's voice boomed across the studio as she gestured toward the cameras. I'm proud that in 30 years of broadcasting, I've never had to use my personal relationships as a publicity strategy. I'm proud that I've earned my success through actual work, not through royal connections and victim narratives. Meghan's hands began shaking with anger as she pointed an accusatory finger at Tamron. You think you're so much better than me? At least, I have the courage to speak out against injustice instead of playing it safe for a paycheck. You're exactly what's wrong with journalism today. All flash, no substance, and absolutely no backbone when it matters." The words hit their mark perfectly. Tamron's composure finally shattered completely as she stepped even closer to Meghan, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "No backbone? Let me show you backbone, Meghan. Security." The call for security sent the entire studio into chaos. Audience members began standing up to get a better view, while production assistants scrambled to figure out what to do. Meghan's face went white as she realized what was happening. "You're having me removed? Are you serious right now?" Meghan's voice cracked with disbelief and rage. "This is exactly the kind of silencing I've been talking about. You can't handle the truth, so you're literally having me escorted out." Tamron crossed her arms, her voice now ice cold and completely controlled. "The only truth here is that you came on my show, disrespected me, my staff, and my audience. And when confronted with basic questions about your public statements, you chose to attack rather than answer. That's not courage, Meghan. That's cowardice." Two security guards appeared at the edges of the set, clearly unsure about what they were supposed to do but ready to act on Tamron's orders. The sight of them seemed to break something in Meghan's resolve. "Fine, fine," she screamed, throwing her hands up in defeat. "I don't need this shit from you or anyone else. But mark my words, Tamron Hall, this conversation isn't over. Everyone will see exactly what kind of person you really are." As Meghan stormed toward the exit, ripping off her microphone pack and throwing it on the ground, Tamron called after her with devastating finality. "They already have, Meghan. They've seen exactly what kind of person I am. Someone who doesn't back down when faced with lies and manipulation. And more importantly, they've seen exactly what kind of person you are, too." The studio door slammed behind Meghan with a resounding bang that seemed to echo through the stunned silence. Tamron stood in the center of her set, breathing heavily, looking at the abandoned chair and scattered microphone equipment. The audience remained frozen, unsure whether to applaud or remain silent. After a long moment, Tamron straightened her blazer, walked back to her chair, and looked directly into the camera with the composure of a seasoned professional who had just weathered the storm of her career. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a commercial break. When we return, we'll be discussing the importance of accountability in public discourse with our panel of media experts." The red recording light went dark, and the studio erupted in chaos as staff members rushed to clean up the aftermath of what would undoubtedly become one of the most talked about moments in daytime television history. Tamron Hall had stood her ground, and Meghan Markle had walked away, leaving behind a trail of burned bridges and a reputation more damaged than ever before.